Hi, Vicky. Oh, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, there we
Good.
go.
Good.
Now,
good.
did you see what I think it was probably Joe wrote about suggestions about handling the questions tonight?
Yeah, that's exactly what we did last time, I thought. Just focus on
Well,
the positive and ignore the negative.
Yeah. No, but one of the practical points was asking people to direct, instead of putting it to everybody, ask the person to direct the questions either to me or to you, so that we can then just review all the questions, and we can, if there's a lot of similar ones, we can, just roll it into one question. I thought that was a very good idea, and then it doesn't distract everybody with the chat popping up all the time. What do you think about that?
That's fair. Well, that's actually what I did. I didn't address everything that was in the chat.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it stops the questions from going in front of everybody. Like John was mentioning to me, he found it a little bit distracting.
Okay, sure. So they should just go to you and I personally.
Do you want them to go to me or to you or to both of us?
Whichever. I mean, we're co facilitating.
Okay, so why don't we, I'll ask people to send them to you and I.
Yes.
And that way we can, review and yeah. Okay, great.
So I'm gonna join in again from my computer, so that my PowerPoint presentation and the movie are both on my computer, whereas this camera now is on my phone. So I'm just thinking, I guess we're going to start with, you're going to introduce me, and then we're going to start with my presentation, aren't we?
Yes, I'm going to make a few comments to start, and then I'll introduce you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then after you, it'll be Bill, and then after Bill, Brent, and then back to you, so that you can talk about the Zinn farm, what's happened, and show their video, and then we'll go to the Q&A.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Sounds good. I've admitted quite a few folks, so welcome, people. Please just leave yourselves on mute and direct any questions that you have through the chat to Vicky and myself. And it's about 10 minutes before we begin, but we're just letting folks know, welcoming you to the call, and letting folks know how it's going to go. So, all right. I'm a bit anxious about Andreas's movie and getting it to work.
I wonder if iPad 2 is Bill. You're muted, Janine. You're muted.
Whoever's on iPad 2, can you identify yourself?
I think it might be Bill, so we need to see his face.
I'm here.
Okay, can you get your camera going so we can make sure to see you?
All right. Does that start video? Is that the one?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, I should be there now.
excellent. You are there. Great.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
I'm speaking right after Janine.
Yes,
Okay,
and I'll do a little introduction of you before you get started, okay?
yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
How's the light? Oh, maybe that's better.
That looks good to me.
Okay.
Mhm. Bill, I think there might be a little bit of noise in your background. Is that your wife talking?
Not my wife, my sister-in-law, and she's quite
Okay.
talkative.
Well,
Fortunately-
I was just going to,
Fortunately, she can't hear me from here. I hope.
okay. I was just going to suggest that either you should close a door or perhaps unmute yourself.
Okay, maybe I'll
Or
unmute
mute yourself
myself just for
until it's your turn to talk, just so that we don't need to worry about background noise, okay? I hope your sister-in-law is not offended by that.
Okay, it looks like I've been able to share my screen.
Yes, I can see it. Looks wonderful. I love that first picture.
Thank you. That's my place. That's my front
Wow.
yard.
Oh, pretty, pretty.
Thank you. Because I wanted to put some nice pictures because I've got some not so nice ones too.
Okay. Well, it's always nice to start with the positive, eh?
Yes.
Now, have you seen any sign of Brent yet?
No, not yet. Oh, and I'm remembering somebody. Oh, I think I did send them the link.
Okay, I'm just going to check email.
Good. Welcome to those of you that have just joined us. I'm Janine Gibson, a Secretary of Hogwatch, Manitoba, and co-host with Vicki Burns of this webinar this evening. Thank you all for joining us. Vicki's speaking to you from her home. I'm speaking from my home, Northern Sun Farm in the RM of Hanover, highest hogs per hectare in Western Canada.
I'll be right back, Janine. I just have to check something.
No problem. So welcome to those of you that have just joined us. We're just going to wait till the top of the hour to begin. Please do leave yourselves on mute so we have minimal background noise. And we're anticipating everyone being friendly and positive this evening. And if the conversation goes in a different direction than constructive, positive sharing, I'll be muting everyone. So please just share your comments and questions on the chat. Direct them to Vicki or myself. We'll be happy to respond, summarizing some of them. Oh, you can hear Vicky's doing something and she didn't mute herself, so there was a big clunk.
Oh, sorry. Oh, dear. Okay, that's very poor etiquette on my part.
Just using it as an example to invite our guests to mute themselves and communicate with us via the chat.
Mhm. Janine, I am presuming that we will be recording this again, and perhaps I will explain to everybody at the end how they can see the recording. Am I correct that it'll be recorded?
Yes. Yes, we are recording this webinar.
Okay, thank you.
And Vicky, you can still see my screen?
Yes.
Good.
So we'll just wait a couple more minutes. It's not quite 7 o'clock yet.
Excellent. Couple more people were admitting. Welcome to those of you that have just joined us. Thank you very much for your interest. Oh, I see. I meant to change the footer to read www.hogwatchmanitoba.ca. You'll see that on some of the screens I'm going to be sharing with you. And that's where you can get more information on our concerns about the industrial hog operation in Manitoba and support us.
Hi, Vicky. Hi, Janine.
Oh, hello,
Hi,
Lynn.
Lynn.
Hi. Hi, Bill.
Glad you could join us again.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'm just going to turn myself off now.
Sure. Well, here you get to see, for those of you that have just joined us, shot of my front yard, some of my water retention, part of my garden, a little bit of the poplar forest, and you'll be seeing different shots of my little corner of the RM of Hanover. And we are recording this webinar this evening.
Okay.
And there's still a few folks joining us, Vicky. I'm just admitting a couple more.
Okay. Well, do you want to let me know when we can get going then?
I think we should start now.
Okay. Okay, terrific. Well, I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us for this really important discussion. Tonight, we're talking about the impacts of living close to factory hog barns. Before I get started on that subject, though, first of all, my name is Vicky Burns, and I'm one of the members of Hogwatch Manitoba. And we're a group that of volunteers. We're all volunteers, and we are working to promote what we consider to be a sustainable, environmentally, ethically, and economically sustainable hog industry in Manitoba. What's been happening here for the past 25 years is really not sustainable for a number of reasons, and tonight you'll hear about some of them. But before we get going on that, I would like to acknowledge that today I'm joining you from Treaty 1 territory, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, OG Cree, and Dakota peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. And before I introduce our first speaker, I just want to give a little bit of background about some of the negative impacts of living close to hog barns. I know what you're going to be hearing from our three speakers is their personal experience, and that's going to be more meaningful than anything. But I just want to point out that there are some important research papers and so on that document some of the health effects of the odors from hog barns. Often you'll see it referred to as nuisance, but there are reports that really make the point that it's much more than nuisance. The toxic gases and vapors that are coming from these intensive livestock operations include ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, methane, and so on. At the end of this presentation, if you are interested in receiving links to any of those research papers and reports, please send us a message and we will send you the links to those. It's too much to actually put them on the screen right now, but I just wanted you to let you know that there is some real peer-reviewed research papers that talk about this, and that also it's something that those who have experienced it understand that it's very serious. It's not just a little nuisance. It can cause you to become quite ill. But for some reason, and I think we probably all know the reason, there really has not been a tremendous amount of research collecting this kind of data. And I think it's probably because nobody really wants, the government and industry don't really want to have the facts here, because then they might be forced to actually do something about it. But I'll make the point that last week we had heard from somebody who had a connection in the Netherlands. I mistakenly said it was Denmark, but it's the Netherlands that Top Pig Norsven is from. That's a company who's wanting to open some more pig barns here. And that in the Netherlands, they do have a requirement there to put air scrubbers on their barns so that the emissions that are coming out of the barns have to be cleaned, and a lot of that those noxious odors are dealt with, and that is something that is not required here in Manitoba. One of the other things that we're going to do before the end of this is put up on the chat the list of email addresses for several of the government ministers that would be helpful for you to contact if you care about this, and also the contact link for Manitoba Pork to either make your comments to them or ask questions. But one final thing I would like to ask all of you, if you've got questions, please in the chat box, write them up, but direct them to Janine and myself, not to the whole group. If you can direct them to Janine and myself, that way we can look over the whole list of questions, and at the end of the presentations, we can actually compile them in case there are a number of questions that are the same. So it would probably help us to be able to give a fair opportunity for all those who want to have questions asked to have those questions heard. Last week, we ended up not having time to do that. So please put your questions in the chat and direct them specifically to myself and to Janine. Now, having said all of that, I want to introduce you to Janine, who you heard speaking because she's actually the official host of this meeting. Janine Gibson has supported shifting industrial agriculture towards a more resilient type of agriculture, as in the role of an organic consultant and a verification officer. And she's been doing this for the past 29 years through her business, which is called Creative Health Consulting. And since 1991, she's lived on her farm in Hanover, which has the highest number of hogs per hectare in Western Canada. And Janine and I have known each other probably for almost the last 25 years. We worked together on some programs at the Winnipeg Humane Society, and Janine is just a tremendous advocate for the environment, has committed herself to running for the Green Party, both provincially and federally. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Janine to talk to us, and thank you, Janine, for doing this.
Oh, you're so welcome, Vicki. It really helps me, keeps me focused in life and energized, trying to create a more resilient and healthier on many levels agriculture. So happy to share just a little bit about what I both love and find extremely challenging about living in Hanover. We are on Treaty 1 territory. Thank you for acknowledging that. Our farm is on is in the RM of Hanover, and on Road 25 North, which is down in the southeast corner. So I visited here since 1980 and just fell in love with it. We're on a gravel ridge that's covered with oak and ash and poplar forest. None of us could afford land on our own, so we formed it as a cooperative. It's a registered cooperative in Manitoba since 1984. I've lived here full time since 1991 and have really observed the deforestation of the neighborhood, largely because of hog barns, the industrialization of hog barns. In the early 90s, there was a push, and so there was one particular company, Provista, now bought out by High Tech, that was building barns basically in the marsh. We've got a gravel ridge that we live on, and then it slopes down to marsh all around us. And so a number of the barns decided that this would be a good way to deal with their waste, is just let the marsh handle it. And there are a lot of sewage recycling systems that do use marsh principles, but it has to be regulated and carefully managed, not the way the barns here are doing it. So I've observed the deforestation. I've observed the alienation of neighbors. This is one of the only place across the prairies where people don't wave at each other when they pass in their cars. And I think that's because of there was a lot of fighting when folks realized that the density with which they wanted to build hog barns in this area really was too much. So I did a lot of gathering of signatures on petitions and presentations to the RM of Hanover, trying to block some of these barns. But even when they were sited with areas that were clearly full of cattails and marshy conditions, too difficult for growing crops, they still allowed them and said that there would be, the nutrient could be injected to meet crop needs. And I've yet to find a market for cattails. I've also watched our streams turned into ditches. The Joubert Creek, there was a creek that runs through our land that's now called the Pansy Drain. And so just the kinds of damage that's happened. So we're trying to live simpler. Got solar panels. You can see in the picture on the one side of my friend Gerhardt's house, 2 of his solar racks being there, and a picture of my garden with my pea trellis there. And just
excuse
an
me,
intercropping.
Janine.
Yes.
I don't see your pictures right now. Does anybody else see Janine's pictures? No. Okay. So for some reason, it's not screen sharing.
It's not screen sharing. Okay. So let's see what we're doing here. Maybe I've got to have the camera on to screen share. How is that?
Still not seeing anything.
No, you're not seeing anything. Okay, I'm so sorry to hear that. We've got 30 people joining us, so I don't want us to get behind. So if I make this exit minimized video, more. And to press the green share button after minimizing the screen. Yes, well, I'm looking for the green share button. For some reason, it's not coming up. Share screen. Okay, I've clicked on share screen. And that's still not, for some reason, I've got a big picture of you, Vicky. I'm still admitting people.
We
Oh
we
dear.
definitely don't need that.
Okay, so let me
Um,
see. How do I?
I wonder if it's from your other device, Janine.
No, I'm only sharing the screen on my computer.
Okay, I think it says you're starting to screen share now. There we go. You've got it.
Okay, good. But it doesn't look like it's full screen. I'll see if I can make it bigger.
I think you need to press slideshow. Go on the top and say slideshow.
Yeah. Let's hope we can do that. Yay. Okay, well, there's the introduction. So there you see some of our solar panels. You see some of our forest there, some oak and some ash and some poplar around my garden. And there you get a good shot of our oak trees. If you see our wind generator and the little mill house where we grind flour. So this next one is a bit gruesome. So I collect water samples for the Lake Winnipeg Foundation's water project. And I went to the Joubert Creek, and this was the first water sample I did for them. And there was a drowned hog. So you can see its leg there, and it was right up against the culvert at Joubert Creek. And we've seen piles of hogs. Often when I've tried to come back with a photographer, they're taken away. But neighbors phone me all the time about excess dead stock not being picked up, being dumped. We have a lot of coyote activity in the area because the amount of dead stock. So on the other side, you see me feeding one of our pigs. That's an electric fencing program. So we would move our pigs with the house easily movable, so they would churn up the soil, and it's more the kind of pastured pig that Andreas Zinn is going to talk about afterwards. But before we got pigs, we had a neighbor immediately kitty corner to our place who asked, who was wanting to expand his barn. You know, Manitoba has really high levels of barns in Canada, the highest levels of numbers of pigs in barns across Canada. And I said, well, why do you need to expand it? You know what? We really don't need any more manure in this area. And we've already seen pipes put into our forest where there were rings around the trees, showing that manure had been pumped into the northeast part of our land and flooded all. So any nesting birds, everything would be just flooded with manure, very destructive to the forest. He did not know I was an organic inspector, that I was trained in being observant and noticing, and had been in many barns. So he welcomed me in the barn. There I saw just horrible conditions. Around every corner there was an antibiotic bottle with a syringe across the top, indicating that not only was the feed being fed with prophylactic antibiotics added to it, but they were needling the pigs so much that they just had these bottles all over the place. And it's because the confinement conditions are so destructive to the animals. The animals that I saw in the farrowing crates, their eyes were flickering back and forth, showing that they were in just very stressful conditions and not able to really participate, you know, not able to function anymore because of the high levels of stress they were under. And having toured, I've conducted thousands of organic audits across the country, across North America, and I'd never seen animals so stressed and in such horrible conditions. So I left, and even though I have a very strong stomach, I had to be sick after I left that because of the degree of torment these animals were living with. So I have firsthand experience of touring these confinement barns. They're cloven hoofed animals, so being on slatted floors is very stressful for them. They don't have solid footing, and the slatted floors are over pits that their feces and urine falls through. Pigs have very you know very delicate lungs, as gentle as ours. So that's why they need so much antibiotics to be able to live with this horrible smell. It's very damaging to their lungs. And so, we came out here to forage. You can see here some boletes I've gathered from the forest. We've gathered sweetgrass on our land. We have First Nations people come here because sweetgrass grows here. Lots of different mushrooms. You see a couple of different kinds, blues, and different fungi. We've harvested 14 different kinds of fungi here. One of the pictures you see here is the creek that used to run through our place that's now been made into the Pansy Drain. And when I first started coming here in 1980, we could see fish in it. And my son liked to use a net and catch the little fish, and we'd just watch them for a while and put them back. Well, this was a shot I took in the spring. So if already in the spring, this was spring last year, you can see the duckweed floating on the creek. And that means that duckweed is excess phosphorus. So over the course of from 1980 to today, 41 years, we've really seen that creek stop being a creek, becoming the ditch that the province made it into, losing its fish, losing its life, and being polluted with duckweed. I think largely from the picture on the bottom, you can see a large industrial barn, huge number of animals, huge number of animal units. And so really concentrating the manure in a way that is terrible for us to smell, and very unhealthy for not only the animals requiring the antibiotics to stay alive, but for the neighbors that live close. And we'll have someone that lives closer to the barns talking later. I did a survey, and within a 5-mile radius of our farm, we have 72 intensive livestock operations. So very, very different than what we were hoping to live with. Here on this shot, see my house, my adopted grandson working in the garden there. You see my solar panels. You see here we have the creek that has since been taken out. It's a beaver dam that was holding the water back. But this is the creek that ran clear, and this is an early spring shot, so you can see the water is clear, but just gets totally clogged with duckweed, which is a sign of phosphorus pollution. See one of our wind generator there, and more of our forest, and a picture of me. I couldn't quite get it to size. Out chopping through the ice, getting samples. I have a rope attached around me because the ditches are quite deep in our part of Hanover, because there's been so much drainage, drainage occurred, and so much forest come down that it just runs off. And as you can see, lots of cattails, a lot of the land that's been drained that has pumps on it, pumping the water off 24/7, was cattail, a marshy land, because this is a recharge area, and further south is even a more important recharge area to the aquifers that are underneath us, which also recharge Lake Winnipeg. So that's one of the reasons why I was happy to take samples to try and see if these barns were generating antibiotic resistant bacteria. And as those of you that were with us last week know, DNA for those antibiotic resistant bacteria were found in the samples that I gathered. In some cases, as many as 3 different DNA profiles. So 3 different sets of antibiotic resistant genes showing up because it got late into the year before I got the go ahead, I had to chop through the ice to get at the water for the soil samples and the water samples. And so basically, because I want to support future generations working to, to be able to have a healthy life, in Manitoba. I support Hogwatch Manitoba and ask you to do the same. We're financed through donations, ask you to consider making a donation. It's just, we need to change this industrial form of agriculture for future generations. Thanks so much, and happy to answer any questions later on.
Okay, thank you very much, Janine. Beautiful pictures of your place. It's nice to see. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to throw out one fact. We did mention it last week, but I think it's important for you to hear this again. Manitoba is one of the top hog producers in Canada. I think we produce almost as many pigs per year as any other province, but here's a big difference. In Manitoba, the average number of pigs per farm, although I hate to even call it a farm, they're kind of industrial factories, is in 2019, it was 5,720 animals per farm. That's more than twice as much as the next highest producing in Quebec. They had 2,377 pigs per farm. And here's one more thing to throw out, because next week I'm going to be talking to you about the impacts on Lake Winnipeg. Back in 1991, the average number of pigs per farm in Manitoba was 434. And now it's grown to 5,720. So that's just to really stress to you how industrial this has become. It's not family farming anymore. So just a little tidbit there. Now I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Bill Massey. And I'll just let you know that Bill and his wife Dorothy live on a small farm at Gros Isle, Manitoba. And in the summer, they raise pigs and chickens. They keep about half a dozen laying hens over the winter, and they have about the same amount of sheep to keep the grass down around the machinery and so on. They both grew up on small farms, and it's pretty neat. They're living the life they did 50 years ago. And they both were teachers. They're now retired, but Bill is going to tell you a lot more of his story. But just to put in a plug for him, he's actually written a book, and his book, you can find out more information about it at www.billmassey.ca. So I'm presuming that Bill is going to talk more about this, but anyway, welcome, Bill. You'll need to unmute yourself now, and we're looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you. Can everybody hear and see me?
Yep.
Good. Well, good evening. Thanks, Vicki and Janine, for this opportunity to speak tonight. I love the title that you chose for the series of webinars, and I want to talk about those hidden costs for our group and my family because of the hog barn. We live in Gros Isle, as Vicki said, and we're about 5,000 feet northeast of the hog barn on Rock Lake in Gros Isle, the hog barn on Rock Lake Colony. After determined opposition from the community, the colony claimed they were replacing existing facilities in their hog operation, which they said contained 889 animal units. The barn was completed in late 2006, and by December, the smell was atrocious for anyone downwind of the barn. The southwest wind was our friend no longer, but more on that later. We initiated an investigation with the Farm Practices Protection Board that revealed the operation had grown to 1,437 animal units. This began a long struggle to keep the colony within the 889 limit. The municipality of Woodlands eventually had them reduced to appropriate numbers by March of 2009. The municipality conducted an investigation again in 2012 at the request of the two neighboring municipalities. They discovered this time that there were 1,290 animal units in the barn and made the claim they had reduced the population in March of 2013. They refused to give us any information, and I suspect that no third party ever went back into the barn or has since a Farm Industry Board investigation in 2014 that revealed the colony had 1,125 animal units. And so on it went. We complained to the municipality about the smell and requested a count. They expected the colony to self-monitor and maintain their animal units and refused to conduct a third-party count. We knew from the smell and other factors such as road traffic that the colony has been over in their count ever since. An ombudsman's investigation, which took several years, turned out to be very disappointing because they refused to go back to 2004 and consider the evidence we have about the numbers, stating that too much time had passed. We were unable to proceed with any initiatives until that investigation had been completed. Otherwise, it would have halted the process. The one good thing about it was it gave me time to write my book. Here it is, of pork and potatoes. And I've been in communication with our MLA, Ralph Eichler, and he agreed to meet with us once the investigation was finished. I called him last fall and he suggested we should include the Minister of Conservation in the meeting. This was exactly what I wanted because my purpose was to get conservation to count the pigs at the colony. Ralph said that he would set that up. I got in touch with Ralph in the third week in January of this year, and he told me the meeting would not include the Minister of Conservation. And so I asked if we could meet with him. At that meeting, Ralph said the minister refused to meet with us, and I think he was embarrassed about this development. At the end of January, I wrote the minister a letter requesting a meeting. On March 11th, we received a reply from Deputy Minister Gray of the Department of Municipal Relations, outlining the department's position, which includes misinformation about the number of units on the colony in 1998. Before their request to expand, the colony had a 1,250 sow to weanling operation, and we're finishing 2,000 animals in 10 biotechs for a total of 658 animal units. The province has taken the position that the colony had a 1,250 sow to finish operation, which would have meant 1,562.5 animal units. I had discussions with Petra Laura about this misconception on the part of the province, which I remember is very frustrating. She seemed unwilling to hear anything I had to say. I've received a legal opinion on this latest development, and it is not good news for us. If we were to carry this matter forward to the courts, or I assume the Farm Industry Board, the colony could argue on the basis of this letter that the intensity of use in their hog operation has not increased. As well as that, recent court decisions set out that the municipality is entitled to be given substantial deference in the application and interpretation of its bylaws. So there you have it. This has been our experience with the government over the past 16 years, where they will take every twist and turn imaginable to support this industry that, in my opinion, is not sustainable environmentally, ethically, or even financially. I want to talk about some of the other hidden costs to my community and to us personally. Dorothy and I had a very good relationship with the colony before this began. She made friends with some of the women who taught her to spin once we got sheep on the farm. She in turn sold crafts for them at the local craft sale. We were invited into their homes and I did business with them. All that changed when I became leader of the group that opposed their plans for expansion. It came to a head one Christmas season. The colony had received a truckload of coats that had been exposed to smoke in a warehouse fire. They spread out these coats on a field to air out and took what they wanted. The women called Dorothy and asked her to help them deliver the rest to charity. Dorothy had injured herself and was on crutches, so I suggested I would come over with her to help collect the coats. After the truck was loaded, I was standing outside waiting while the women gave Dorothy some baking. The wife of the hog barn manager saw me standing there and shouted at Dorothy, "Is that Bill Massey? Why is he here? He is making our name black." Dorothy was never invited back. We're not the only ones in the community who are unwelcome at the colony, and that's a shame. For one of our meetings of our group, we invited a local real estate agent to come and speak with us. He told us he would not sell a property within 2 miles of an intensive livestock operation. There are 12 homesteads within a mile of this barn, and the village of Gras Isle is within 2 miles and has a population of 150 people. We are all affected. I have had people call me about buying property at Gras Isle, and I tell them what the real estate agent told us. We're on a giant aquifer here, and the underground flow of water is in a southeast direction. The effects of this operation on the groundwater that feeds our wells could extend even further than 2 miles downstream. I also tell them about the possibilities of contamination of the water supply. I can't tell you how important this place has been for my family during the pandemic. We have separate accommodations for them so we can social distance and they can enjoy this farm. The grandchildren are all over our 12 acres, building bale forts, playing hide and seek, checking out the pigs, chickens, and sheep. The adults have their toys here also and relax and unwind with go-karts, dirt bikes, and snowmobiles. Before we plan any kind of activities outdoors, we check the wind direction. And if it's from the southwest, we look for another day. I'm very concerned about the state of the environment and the long-term effects this hog barn will have, polluting the environment, creating health concerns, and social costs for my family and the community. I'm also concerned about the position and attitude the government has for this industry and the environment. We need to do our best to change that. I've always been very close to the land, and I've watched the changes in agriculture over my lifetime. I'm concerned about the future and the legacy that we leave behind. I want to end with this poem I wrote about the southwest wind, as it was before the barn was built. When the barometric pressure drops, we can hear the train whistle from the main line at Rosser, miles away. It often means rain. I remember one occasion when I stood under the veranda of the barn and watched a wall of water from a thunderstorm crossing the field towards me. Spread my ashes in the fields. I hear the long, low moan of a train miles away. The barometer is falling and there's a southwest breeze. I can smell the rain in the air this day. I hope it means that this drought will ease. I watch a wall of water march across the yard from the shelter of the veranda on the front of the barn. The life-giving moisture pours down hard, nurturing plants and hope once again on the farm. I smell the fresh earth and the bounty it holds. I thank the spirits of the soil for all that they give. I need to care for this land and nurture it so the ones who follow have the same future to live. Spread my ashes in the fields all over this farm. I want to be part of the growth and rebirth each year. Let them say about me that I have done no harm, and know I am part of the land I hold near. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Well, that was so beautiful, Bill.
Yes, it was so beautiful. I just want to make the point, in case some of you who are listening don't know the difference between animal units and individual animals. Bill was referring a lot to animal units, and I don't want you to think that that was the actual number of pigs. An animal unit is kind of based on the weight of the animals. So animal units actually include much more. The number of animals that are part of an animal unit is much more than one per unit. And there's one more thing I just want to add to what Bill has talked about, the odor issue. This is from a report by the National Collaborating Center for Environmental Health. And I won't read very much of it, but I think this is quite relevant, where they talked about increased occurrence of headaches, runny nose, sore throat, coughing, diarrhea, and burning eyes in people living within 2 kilometers of a hog operation. So that's just one of the examples of the really serious human health impacts that we're learning about. Anyway, again, thank you, Bill, and Bill will be around for questions if there are any later. Now, I would like to go to our next speaker, Brent Bjorklund, and Brent is actually fairly recently retired from the banking industry, so he's kind of a city slicker who's moved out to the country to build his dream home. But unfortunately, that dream has been seriously impacted by the discovery of a hog barn nearby. So Brent, I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us your story, which is very frustrating, I know. And in the meantime, I will screen share for you.
Great, Vicki. Thank you very much. I look forward to presenting my little story. And I hope that I can see this. I need to be able to see the slides, Vicki. So
yes, I'm going to do that right now. And can you see it now?
great. Looks good. So in 2014, bought a house, 3.5 acres on the river, Weymouth River. We had rejected a number of other homes because of hog barns close by. And you can start flipping the screen. Just keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. So we started work on the property. You can see that it's kind of a, just stop there for a sec. It's not really built for resale. It's a retirement home. Okay, flip again. All right. Yeah, it's a shop, a large shop with a fabric building attached. So what happened in, go to the farm practices one. In 2018, we started smelling some very strong smells from the barn that we thought had been closed for years. And we couldn't get any information on it. So I did get in contact with the farm practices board because that's what it said on Google what to do. So they said that they don't deal with odor. They wouldn't provide me with any information on who owns the barn or how many animal units are in it or anything else. And they wouldn't provide any mediation. They also explained that that is legal immunity for the farmer. I checked with a lawyer to see if I could sue the agent, and because the barn had been closed before, I really didn't have any case there either. So I got a little, they gave it to the farm practices board, eventually gave it to the RM, and then the RM gave it to my building inspector. Oh, go back a bit to the partners screen, this one. So I had been building, as I said, and I use local contractors, and these guys are excellent. Very highly recommend all of them. I consider them my friends. They're community people, as I hope I will be, and I really enjoyed working with them. So it's, you know, you can kind of see the situation, right? So they gave it to my building inspector, and he's been great too. He actually helped me design the shop. So flip forward to serendipity, or I'll just keep stop. Yeah, so you can see, go back one, go back. Yeah, you can see I am 200 meters away. This is the distance between the house and the barn. I'm 230 meters away. Up above is the lagoon. It's supposed to be 400 meters by the guy line. And over across the river, you can see that there's another barn. It's about 600 meters. Hardly ever smell that, because the distance is, you know, the effect of the distance is huge. So you can flip down a bit. Yeah, so if you're wondering what it smells like, up to that picture, the funny one, imagine what it smells like. That's like somebody building a 1,000-person apartment building, and all the poop and the pee goes to an open pit, and then it gets spread out on the lawn. Okay, so flip down. So the hog barn is designed with powerful fans that blow the air in over top of the poop and pee, and then it comes out the sides. So down more. And so I got kind of a little frustrated while I'm waiting what to do, and started making memes. Next one. That's my tractor. It has nothing to do with this, but it is nice. Next. So I found out that they actually measure odor in Europe and in Japan, and they have clear limits on what it is. Next one. So it's a hydrogen sulfide, which is a gold film analyzer, and it measures the odor. So go next. There is no actual barn anywhere in Manitoba that has ever had an improvement for odor. All you can do is put a shelter belt up, and that's really because the industry demands zero cost. Next. So what I learned from all this is pretty surprising, like in terms of the buffers next to the rivers and lakes, really the farmer can go as close as he wants as long as the machinery doesn't fall in. Next, subsidies for agriculture. Well, we all know about subsidies for go back. We all know about subsidies for agriculture, so I won't go too much. University. So the universities usually use traditional reductive analysis, and this misses knowledge in many complex areas. So I'm not accusing any individual scientists of anything, but they very much control the research. Political interference in the environment and protections. The industry is very powerful, as you know. Community is divided. We've already talked about that a little bit. You can see it in my situation. Property disclosure statements. So normally when you sell a house, there's a limit, like you have to define, make the buyer aware. Well, you don't have to make the buyer aware of a close by hog barn. And you can see why, because that would be a real red herring for everyone. So go down. So, you know, there were about about the same number of buffaloes on the prairies that we have cows now in North America, of about 100 million. But you can't find any Aboriginal verbal history saying, damn buffaloes ruining our climate. And that's because pasture animals are a net carbon sink and confined animals are net emitters. So we need to mimic Mother Nature. So go to the next one. Here's an example in Alberta of a fairly large pasture pig operation called Sprague Farm. There's lots of other ones. Next. So I'm a finance guy, right? So I'm thinking to myself, when I finish this construction, I should buy something. Maybe I'll buy a regenerative agriculture deal, or maybe I'll buy an industrial hog barn. So what are the barriers? You always look at it when you're investing. What's the negative risks? So with regenerative agriculture, one of the negative risks is agricultural sovereignty. That is that we don't really control our agriculture. It's done by international trade agreements. Next thing is the technology. We don't really have the technology yet for regenerative. The slaughter rules, distribution, and marketing system aren't set up yet. And along with that is the banking, taxation, which goes with it, carbon tax exemptions. And of course, I already mentioned university research. Next. Let's say I was to buy an industrial hog barn. What are my risks with that? Well, that's even scarier, let me tell you. You got African swine flu and everything, all the other diseases that go along with that, right? And then you've got new research coming in from outside of the university departments, and I can show you links on all of that, that could create all kinds of extra regulations. Then the Biden administration coming out with the 2023 new agriculture bill, farm bill, that could be removing some of the subsidies on your feed inputs. Consumer and corporate demand. You look at General Mills investing $4 million now in research on regenerative agriculture. That's the future. Plus your millennials want to know where their food's coming from. Next, climate change and carbon taxes. Well, we know there's a risk of that if you're in this business. Foreign competition. If the price per pound is lower in Brazil, that's where High Life's going to go. Also, it could be a trade war. Soil biology versus soil chemistry. So we've always been told that liquid manure is liquid gold, right? Well, not so much. Soil biology is showing us that the biology is just as important or more than the chemistry. And that anaerobic manure is not so great. Next, plant production synthetic. That's, oh, I'm losing my screens. Anyways, fake meat. Fake meat is coming and the price per pound will affect your business. Nutrient runoff, animal rights, and odor regulations. Well, you know, the industry's been able to barrel over that every time. So I put them at the bottom because I don't think that that'll really change too much. I hope it does, but you know, they've been able to get away with it. Labor issues. That's a big one. And you can flip down to the next one if you want. You know, do you really want to spend your days checking on the feeder, checking on the water, and removing the dead bodies? That's kind of not the funnest thing in the world. And I would think that young people would be more interested in all the challenges involved in regenerative. I certainly would. So here's an example here of some outdoor winter farrowing, you know, for babies, baby pigs, outdoor winter farrowing. And you can see, what do you see right away? Low capital cost. So if you're in the hog business, in the industrial hog business, and you're looking to the future, it's not hard to get into regenerative agriculture and livestock. That's my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you,
I had
Brent.
to keep it in 10.
Okay, thank you very much, Brent. I'm hearing a bit of an echo. Is everybody hearing that echo? No?
I'll try and mute.
Okay. Okay, that was really interesting and a lot of information that you've covered, Brent. So thank you so much for filling us in on all of that. Just one more little tidbit I'm going to throw in before we go to a positive note. And this is again from the review conducted by the National Collaborating Center for Environmental Health. They talked about higher rates of respiratory symptoms, including toxic or inflammatory effects in people living within 2 kilometers of a large hog operation. So as I mentioned before, if any of you are interested in seeing the links to what I'm referring to, please put it in the chat and we will send them to you afterwards. And now I would like to hand it back over to Janine, because she's going to tell us about Andreas Zinn and their family farm and why it is that Andreas can't be with us tonight. But this is an example of a farm that is really doing things the way we hoped most farms would. So take it over, Janine.
Thank you, Vicki. I'm going to try and share my screen again because Andreas has sent us a video. And he also explains why he wasn't able to be with us tonight, which he was hoping to do. So let me see now. I want to share the screen again. Can you hear that okay, Vicki?
I can only hear you clicking.
You couldn't hear Andreas speaking?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm going to try and, okay, so I have to escape this. We were hoping to have Andreas here in person, but while I try and get this screen sharing working again, but he had the plant where they are to get their chickens slaughtered, changed the date for the chicken slaughtering, and there's only one plant in Manitoba that they can use. So he had to record this for us last night and send it to us. And so now I'm just again I've never done a video. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's go back to this. And usually I can see the share screen button, no problem, but for some reason it's just not coming up here. Okay, there it is. There it is. Right, so I think that really shows the policies of the government to support large scale businesses rather than, okay, so what do I want to do? I want to share the Hogwatch rather than the small scale abattoirs are like in BC where the abattoirs are mobile. So hopefully I've started the screen sharing.
Yes, it's showing now.
And
Janine.
here is Andrea, a member of a family farm.
But we can't hear Andreas.
He's saying it's a multi-scale or multi-animal livestock farm. You still can't hear him. I've got my So he's saying his livestock is on pasture 3 seasons of the year and on warm winter days. They've milled their own feed, GMO-free grains, wheat, barley, oats, hemp, peas, and flax. So no growth hormones, no antibiotics, and that's one reason why they make their own feed. He says the reason he has to make the recording is the slaughter plant changed their dates without notice, and so he had to respond. So right now he's loading chickens so that they can be slaughtered first thing in the morning. And he says this is a result of government policy that doesn't support small scale operations. Can you hear it a bit better now? So he's speaking about government policy is made for the benefit of the large producers.
Janine, we still can't hear anything.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
Well, I guess we'll just have to, I don't think he's, what do you think I should do, Vicky? Do you think I should just repeat what he's saying so people can hear it? Because I thought he was going to do a slideshow, but I don't see anything. I don't see any pictures
Someone
but him.
says, somebody has just put in the chat that when you screen share, there's a button to select that allows for computer sound. Do you happen to see that?
Okay, that's good to know. Screen sharing. Remote control. There's a button that should say share computer sound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Herd sizes.
Can
We'll
you
just
hear it
listen
now?
through them.
Yes.
Small herd size, straw bedding, we compost, we pasture, graze with frequent moves. We again mill our own feed and we do direct sales.
So they sell mostly to their
So
neighbors.
we'll start with herd size. We use small herd sizes for several reasons. Mainly is with a small herd size, you're able to keep a good oversight of all the animals, and you quickly notice that if there's a sick animal that needs individual attention. And because we're a smaller operation with smaller herd sizes, the owners such as myself, we're with the animals every day, working with them. Fewer animals also reduces environmental pressures. It reduces the potential for odors, and it would automatically reduce the manure concentration on the land or the surrounding land that's around the farms. The next thing that we use is straw bedding, and straw bedding is very important with livestock. For several reasons. We use straw bedding in the barn and in our hoop shelters for the winter time for the animals to bed in. So straw bedding provides a natural environment for the animals for the pigs to be rooting in, and it also provides warmth in the winter time and cushioning, so then they're not walking on concrete floors all the time in the barn. Straw also provides a balance for the carbon to nitrogen ratio. And the carbon nitrogen ratio is very important when it comes to manure, is because once there's too much nitrogen in the mix, as in you don't have enough straw because the straw provides the carbon. If there's too much manure and not enough straw or carbon, that is when you get the noxious gases being produced. As soon as you have a noxious gas, or as soon as it starts to smell, then you know you don't have enough carbon. So we use straw just because it's around us. You could use wood chips or sawdust, things like that. We have straw plenty around us, and we provide our animals fresh straw daily. Not only because they enjoy it, it reduces their stress because it's an environmental, or it's a natural bedding for them, but it also maintains that carbon nitrogen ratio, so it keeps the smell down. So another thing we do is the composting, and we compost the manure, especially having the carbon already mixed in with the nitrogen. The straw is already mixed in with the manure. That composting stabilizes the nutrients in the manure, so we don't get leaching, we don't have any water runoff issues, or contamination into water bodies, things like that. Because it's composted, aerobic composting, the material, the nutrients break down via microorganisms, and they stabilize the nutrients and the straw into eventually what is humus, or organic matter, which is extremely stable. The liquid portion of the manure, we have a system that it separates the liquid portion off, so then the straw and the manure doesn't become too wet, because as soon as you have too high of a water concentration, again you have anaerobic breakdown, and then you get the noxious gases being produced again. Composting, another benefit is it reduces volume of material, so you're not needing to transport as much manure. You can just transport a smaller amount of compost, and therefore you're able to more cost effectively spread that nutrient load over a greater distance. If you're just doing it with raw manure, you're limited by the cost of trucking such a large amount of volume, so you can't haul it as far. Compost is also a very great soil additive. We've been using our own compost in our gardens for years, and we've also been selling it to other gardeners and market gardeners. Our compost is also spread on our pastures. Again, it helps spread the fertility that is generated from the animals on the farm back onto the farm to cycle the nutrients and to grow more grass. So with that, the next thing we do is pasture grazing. But what's important is pasture grazing with frequent moves. The frequent moves means for us, we are either moving them every day or every second day. We don't let them stay on the same piece of ground for too long, because then they start turning the ground, and then you create more environmental damage. So the animals are always moving, which is actually a natural process for animals to do, because they don't want to be stuck in one place very long. The daily moves gives the animals access to fresh pasture every day, or fresh grass, and also the frequent moves spreads the manure load. If we had kept them in the same spot for too long, you get a high concentration of manure, and it becomes unhealthy for that piece of ground. So moving animals frequently, daily, or every second day, provides nutrients, the manure, to be spread over the land. And then moving them more frequently also provides the land recovery time. recovery time is important, because if you just graze down the grass right down to the soil, that really hinders the regrowth of the grass, and it takes it a really long time, and then that soil can become prone to wind or water erosion. Another thing we are doing, like mentioned before, we mill our own feed on the farm. We do this because we know for a fact everything that's in it. The first couple months back in 2008, when we first started with pigs, we did initially buy commercial feed, and we really didn't like the way it smelled. We didn't like the ingredients that were being used. And we did a side-by-side test with commercial feed and then the feed that we made with this old hammer mill that we had purchased. And the pigs every time went to our feed, ate our feed first, and then went to the commercial feed. So they kind of made the decision for us. It was a very easy decision, and we like the fact that the animals prefer it, we prefer it because we know what's in it, and our customers prefer knowing that we mill our own feed because they know exactly what's in it. We can guarantee there's no GMOs, no preventative antibiotics or hormones or really any of those unpleasantries. And the last thing that we do is direct sales. This provides the opportunity for our customers to really get to know us as the producers of their food. They get to know how their food is being grown. They get to know exactly where it's coming from. We provide farm tours, and we hope to do farm tours this year, if we're allowed to, of course. And that provides opportunity to customers to really come out and see what we're doing and how we're doing it. And another thing that we do for our customers is we provide delivery locations and pickup locations in Winnipeg, so we can deliver to any address weekly, and we also provide pickup locations for people who live out of town. We do that every month as well. So we feel it's very important to provide maximum opportunity for customers to access naturally produced meat. And if anybody is interested in Zin Farms or wants to have any more information, feel free to contact us. All our contact information is on our website at www.zinfarms.com. And I hope I hear from you, and would love to answer any questions you have. Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, that was really, it's too bad we had a few problems showing you what Andreas had to say, but it's encouraging to know that a family can make a living that way. So if you're interested, as I say, please contact, look on their website, and he'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay, we'll go to some questions now. I think there was a question actually for Brent, and that was about well, actually, before we go for a question to Brent, I'm going to mention this question. Somebody has asked, does it matter which government is in power for trying to mitigate issues associated with industrial hog barns? Frankly, it was both the Conservative government in the 90s and then the NDP government following that who were involved in the expansion of the hog industry. And the NDP government did put a moratorium on any new development back in, I think, 2006 or 2007. And then this current government ended up getting rid of that moratorium a few years ago. And now they're actually doing whatever they can to encourage more hog barn development here. They've actually loosened up some regulations, and it's a big concern, which is why we at Hogwatch have kind of tried to get a little bit more active. perhaps while other questions are being answered, I'm going to type into the chat the addresses of a few government ministers in case any of you do feel like you want to have communication with our current government to express either support or, we hope, not support for what's going on now. Okay, now there was a question here to Brent. It's at the end of your presentation. Oh, can you say more now about how the industry controls agriculture research? Brent, do you feel you can answer that?
Yeah, I can put a link in. There's studies that show. You can look at John Eichert first, though. Listen to John Eichert, and but there are new studies coming out, like I said, from outside of the industry that show those two things, both the control of research as well as the political control against regulations by the industry.
John Eichard, by the way, his last name is Ikerd, and he's an agricultural economist and an activist in the United States. He's done tremendous work there trying to help deal with the problems created by industrial agriculture. So he is a very good resource.
We brought him to Manitoba and he spoke at our event. I think it was 3 years ago, Vicki, was it? At the University of Winnipeg. So we do direct people to his website if you want more information, because he's, I can't remember whether it's North Carolina or South Carolina, but he's from the South there. And so he really saw the negative impacts of industrial agriculture on the Carolinas. And I think he's an agricultural economist. He started sounding the alarm, and so we've brought him to Winnipeg many times to talk about regenerative agriculture and moving away from these industrial models.
Okay, thanks, Janine. I just want to make the point that a recording is being made of this, and even if you don't want to watch the whole recording, you might want to look in the chat, because we are going to put the addresses of various government ministers and also Manitoba Pork in case you wanted to make any comments or have any communication with people in authority. Right now, we are aware that there are at least 2 areas in the province where there are proposed new big barns happening, and where there are groups of people who are trying to fight these barns. And from what we know, really the main way for you to successfully be able to stop the development of a new barn is to get as many people in the community as possible to come together and let your opposition be known to that. That's really, I think, the only way. We're aware of a group near Killarney who at this point have been successful in stopping the development of 2 new high life barns, although it's not absolutely final yet, but they've worked hard. They've had many people join their work. Most of the population of their RM has actually been able to, has joined forces with them. So if you're involved in one of those kind of struggles, if you would like more help, you can contact us at Hogwatch Manitoba, and we'll perhaps help link you up with others who are involved in this. There's no magic answers. It's hard work, but it's definitely worth it. Now, here's a comment from someone. Can anyone comment on the price of cheap food and the impact that has on the environment? Janine, do you want to comment on that?
Absolutely, yes. There's a saying, you get the kind of politicians you deserve, or a society gets the kind of politicians they deserve. And unfortunately, there's a parallel in agriculture. Like, you get the kind of agriculture you want to pay for. So what I personally have done is tried to buy local and buy local organic whenever I can. And when it has to buy from further away, I buy organic, because that's what certified organic means, is that, you know, someone outside of the farm has actually been on that farm to verify this is how they're managing their manure, this is how they're managing their livestock. So this is not just their declaration. In Manitoba, none of the manure management plans are audited from these barns. They say they're staying 100 meters back from the waterway, but as Brent mentioned earlier, we see that they're not. We see they apply the manure right up. And in fact, as I mentioned in my presentation, they decide to move Joubert Creek off their land and put it in big culverts that run around the farm. Well, there's still a depression there, much as they tried to build it up. So there's no. Someone, there's no agricultural, none of the province is auditing the manure management plans. They're written out and they're submitted, but they're not verified on the farm. We know that for a fact. They have not enforced monitoring the manure management plans. And that's why we have things like manure being sprayed on cattle while they're grazing on the fields. I had a neighbor phone me. They're spraying manure and they haven't moved the cattle off the field. And it's like constantly trying to cut corners to make as much money as possible because the margins are so low. And you know, the spraying of animals like that would give them heartworm, would give them lungworm, but they don't want to pay for the staffing. The staffing expenses are high. And I have empathy for the farmers because they're trying to function in a system that's stacked against them. So they lose money, poor animal. And I think the big push for so many hogs being produced in Manitoba is it's all for export. And it's the big companies like Maple Leaf making money at the export level where all the manure stays here and does the damage. But because they're enforcing, the policies are enforcing the large scale of production, we only have one chicken slaughter plant in Manitoba. It's all about big scale, not the small local scale or the movable abattoirs that would even further reduce the stress of the animals and also leaves the offal and the blood for composting on the land where the animals were raised. So you don't have the compilation of the offal or the compilation of the manure in this large industrialized concentrated system that we're dealing with now, which is also very unstable. As Brent mentioned, when the price fluctuates, then they have these massive kills where the animals are just killed because it's costing the farmers too much to feed them. We have things like the fire patrol and the fire regulations reduced because they call them low occupancy buildings, so they don't have to meet fire code. And that's why we have thousands, tens of thousands of animals almost yearly dying in massive hog barn fires, is because they don't have sufficient fire prevention, because again, they're trying to save money every chance they get. So yes, I just want to finish up, in order to support the kind of agriculture you want to see, buy local. Yes, the federal government does have a role to play, but let's have Brett speak to this issue and then we'll come back to some of these others.
I want to say something to support the environment officer that I dealt with. He was very active and he came and looked at the barn right away. But the problem was he was so incredibly limited in his duty and his areas that he could touch on that it really didn't make much difference.
Yes. So even if there are individuals in the bureaucracy that care about the environment, there's no political will coming down, and they're so restricted in what they can say. For example, if an RM blocks a hog development now, there's a provincially appointed council that can overturn the RM decision. The RM, of course, councillors are voted for. That's a democratic process. Now we have an undemocratic government appointed board that can overturn that process and say, no, we're going to put a hog barn there. We don't care that the neighbors don't want it.
I just want to jump in. There's a couple more comments that we need to cover. But in relation to this general question, that's why the title of our webinar series is all about the hidden costs of industrial hog production. Because last week we talked about the antibiotic resistance issue. This week, we're talking about the impacts on local neighbors and the terrible noxious odors and sometimes water contamination. Next week, we're going to be talking about the increased degradation of our lakes because of the excess phosphorus and nitrogen in all the manure. So those are all costs that are going to cost both financial, but also human health impacts, psychological impacts. Those are all costs that are not taken into account, and that's why we want to bring them to people, to bring them to the fore. Here's a comment somebody has made, that it comes back to the price people are willing to pay, and we have to ensure that low-income families can afford the food we produce. So how do we produce high-quality food for everyone that does not damage the environment? I wish that we had Andreas Zinn on, or some of the other family farms that we know are producing food, because I know that people who are buying food directly from farmers, wherever that's possible, are not paying a huge premium for that. And somehow we have to facilitate this, because being able to produce cheap food at these other hidden costs in the long run is just not going to work out.
Vicky, we have a response from Colin on our chat who says subsidies are aimed at industrial agriculture, making food cheap. If it were aimed at farms practicing agroecology, sustainable food would be much cheaper. We also have some of the lowest cost food in the world, and we've come to expect it. And that's really why, you know, I don't look at what my local market garden is charging. I want to buy there first, and I want to support local as much as possible. We have organizations like Farmers for Climate Solutions. I'm on the board of Canadian Organic Growers, one of the founders of Farmers for Climate Solutions. In the budget, we were given over $300 million to assist farmers in implementing more climate-friendly activities. And this is smaller scale agriculture. So we're really hoping to see more cover crops, green manure crop, rotational grazing. You know, Andreas said how important it is they rotationally graze all their livestock, because that really reduces parasites. It reduces the need for pesticide control and parasite control when you rotationally graze. So the federal government is starting to support more regenerative agriculture because it's so much better for the environment. And like this industrial model at many levels is very deleterious to the environment, specifically to those of us that live near. You know, fortunately, our co-op is on a ridge, so we don't have a lot of the smell, but we do have the high coyote populations because of all the dead stock that are around and the degradation of our waterways, not to mention the people that phone saying that they're having such a hard time working in these barns because of how not only how the pigs are treated, but how they're treated. So it's going to take time, but by having events like this and sharing trying to raise the awareness, we're hoping that we'll be able to demand more accountability from our politicians and from our governments.
I just want to jump in here. Someone has asked if we can please explain Bill 19. Bill 19 is something that happened several years ago. And what I would like to do is refer you to the Hogwatch Manitoba website, because Bill 19, there's a lot of information there about Bill 19. So that's hogwatchmanitoba.ca. Somebody else has asked whether Bill Massey could tell us just a little bit more about the themes in your book, Bill. Are you able to unmute yourself and talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to. Well, the book is about our community's 15-year struggle trying to control the numbers in this hog barn next door. That part I talked about in my presentation a bit. And the other, it's two stories in one. The other half of the book is my childhood, being raised on a small farm in Manitoba. And I was raised in a troubled family, and we were very poverty stricken. And the way it ties into the hog barn fight is I had to struggle to survive in that situation. I learned skills that I was able to carry forward in this hog barn situation. I was a teacher and a principal, as Vicky mentioned earlier, and I did a lot of work with. I worked in rural schools, and in particularly one school, it was a very poor area, and I did a lot of work in child abuse prevention. I worked with children in poverty, and I became a specialist in dealing with violent children, and I taught nonviolent crisis intervention at the University of Winnipeg. But none of that's in the book, but it was a result of my childhood, my growing up years, and I turned to the community for help and support, and I found it there, and I was very, very fortunate to have two people, my grandfather being one of them, and the other being a neighbor that I worked for many years in the summertime as I was growing up, to help guide me and support me and gave me the skills that I needed to carry on this struggle for my community. So I hope you'll enjoy the book if you read it. It's if I can do a little pitch here, Vicky, you can find it on Amazon. It's in chapters, Barnes and Noble, and Friesen Press. So it's online, so it's not hard to find. So
what's the title again?
The title is Of Pork and Potatoes. And the reason, and the title itself is significant because in the book you'll see we had some pigs on our farm, and we survived on pork and potatoes. And in fact, for a 6-week stretch, I took pork and potatoes to school for lunches even. And I turned out to be okay, nothing wrong with it. It was all organic at that time. So I hope that answers your question. But if you have further questions, go to my website at billmassey.ca, and it describes the book there quite well. Thank you for that opportunity.
Okay, great.
And I'm
Thank
hoping
you.
we'll put a link to the book on our website as well, Vicky.
Okay, good. I just want to mention one more thing. This afternoon, I asked for help from lots of other Hogwatch members. I asked if they could send me links to various reports and research and so on about the health impacts of living close to hog barns. And I got a tremendous response. Lots of people sent me really good links and good information. And unfortunately, we don't have the time to go over them all today. But as I mentioned earlier, if any of you are interested in getting some of those links, you can contact us at our Hogwatch Manitoba email, and I'll send you the links. But here is a series. I'll just mention this. There's a series called Environmental Health Impacts of Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations, Anticipating Hazards, Searching for Solutions. Now, there's a lot of American input in that, and that's why you hear the title Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations, CAFOs. Here in Canada, we tend to refer to them as ILOs, Intensive Livestock Operations, but essentially they're all the same. They're like factories, but they're unfortunately for live animals, live pigs, not car parts. One of that series is about health effects of airborne exposures from these hog factories. But there's a whole number of other reports about it. And I noticed on that series that there were actually researchers from Manitoba, from Quebec, from the Netherlands, and from the USA. So that's a really good series if anybody's looking for that kind of information to back up the idea that it really is not healthy to be routinely exposed to these kind of noxious odors. And again, I want to make the point that we found out that in the Netherlands, they do require air scrubbers on the barns. And that's one example of how environmental regulations in Manitoba, I think in probably most parts of Canada, are so much lower than they are in parts of Europe. And that is why we're having people coming over to our country to build these hog factories. And we have to bear the costs of the environmental impacts. So it really is something that we should not be allowing to carry on.
Vicky, may I
I'm
just
not-
mention one other way we're subsidizing? These barns are highly subsidized, is that there's no meter on any of the water use. One of the reasons there's so many barns in Hanover and La Broquerie is because we have 3 different aquifers. And so there's a lot of water under the surface. And so they're allowed to pump out the barns. That's why they have these slurry systems, to use this water intensive form of production, and they don't pay for it at all. And then it pollutes the streams and the lakes and runs off with the excess nutrients going into our water and river system. And it's a public cost. So the whole system externalizes so many costs to the community while privatizing the profit.
Yes. There's one final question, and I think maybe we have time for one more quick answer to that. And I think you're the one who should be talking about it, Janine. It's, can someone explain what regenerative agriculture means, and is it the solution?
Well, I don't think there's any one solution, but the principle of regenerative agriculture is you start with certified organic. So someone from outside the farm is visiting the operation every year to verify they're doing what they say they're doing, because unfortunately, a lot of human beings don't do what they say they're going to do. So regenerative agriculture is based with organic. So you want to be using natural systems. Organic agriculture is based on 2 principles: imitating nature and integrating natural systems, and the precautionary principle. If we don't know it's safe, we don't go there. That's why genetically engineered or genetically modified organisms are not allowed in organic agriculture. And then, because of all the different certification agencies for organic agriculture that's grown up in North America, there's competition between certifiers. So it's not a real even playing field. And so not all certification bodies insist that their operators have a soil building rotation, an actual management plan that regenerates the soil and preserves the ecology around the farm, that sees the farm as a living organism with human beings being part of that larger organism that affects every level: the nutrient cycling in the soil, the amount of microorganisms living in the soil, the health of the community in the soil, the health of the animals and the creatures that live above it, and the impacts on the air and the water. So because of the difference in certifiers enforcing the rule, there's this new term called regenerative agriculture, which insists that it's not only certified organic, but it's actively regenerating the soil. It's actively maintaining the little ecosystems in that particular biosphere. So regenerative refers to the name. It's trying to regenerate the life in a particular ecosystem that a farm is part of that has been destroyed by the extractive economy. So most of capitalism is very extractive. We take the carbon out of the soil. We take the nutrients out of the soil, we take the phosphorus out of the soil, it goes into the food, and then we don't return our waste back to the soil. So we don't have a closed loop nutrient cycling system. And that's what regenerative is working towards, that we're not extracting, but that we're regenerating and helping to stabilize the ecology that our agriculture has had such a negative impact upon.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Brent, do you have anything to add? Somebody wondered if you had anything to add to this.
If you go on the Hogwatch website, I'm regularly posting things, and the Hogwatch group is public too. So it'll have some great links if you want to get in there. There's one other subsidy I love to mention, and that's that we pay $3 million a year to the Canadian Pork Council to send multi-million-dollar executives to promote hog sales in China. And they get all expense paid.
Okay, I think just to make the point, I think Brent is directing you to the Hogwatch Manitoba Facebook page. We do have Facebook where you'll see different posts all the time. the Hogwatch Manitoba website is also a very good source of information. So I refer you there as well. Okay, well, I think we've reached the end of our time tonight. I'll just remind you that next week is the final one in our webinar, this particular webinar series, and it's about the connection between toxic blue-green algae in Lake Winnipeg and other Manitoba lakes and the hog industry. So I welcome you to join again next week. Just remind you, the link that you used to get on tonight is the one that will also be active next week, but I will send a reminder about that. And so thank you so much to Janine, Brent, and Bill for your really interesting presentations, and to Andreas, even though he's not here. And I hope everybody got something out of this. I certainly did. And Janine, I wonder if you and I could just stay on so that we could, I could fill out in the chat. And just to also
and I
remind
just
you
want to
there,
thank you, Vicki. Excellent hosting this evening. Thank you so much.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Just a reminder that if you look at the recording in the chat, there will be some email addresses to various government officials and Manitoba Pork, should you desire to send communication to any of them. Okay, so
and
good
a
night,
sincere
everybody.
you're welcome to all the people who are thanking us in the chat. We're so glad you could be with us and that you care.
Yes. Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye for now.
Well, we're down to, I think the chat says there's about 11 people there now. Vicki, I want to be frank. I did not admit 2 people to the call this evening. And I'm sure you know which 2 people that is. I just
Okay.
decided to just not admit them.
Okay,
I
sure.
had no desire in my heart to welcome them to the call.
Sure. Okay. So I'm just going to add the addresses here. Oh shoot! I typed something. Anyway, I'll try and do this up before you officially end the thing. Okay.
Sure, no problem. I'll
Okay.
leave it up. And I'm going to send the link to this recording and the last one to Chris to post on the website. Is that what you want?
Yes, that's what we've done.
Yeah, because Zoom contacted me and said I don't have any more room to store videos. So I think it's because I've still got the first Can White Sands Zoom recording. So I'll send them to Chris.
Yes, and she can put them up just like she did this time. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thanks. Takes me a little time to type.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to send Andreas a book to thank him.
Okay, great.
We could probably put Andreas's talk on the website too, couldn't we?
Sure. Yeah, we could, absolutely.
I'll forward this to Chris.
Okay. I'm just about done here. And then
I'm so sorry I didn't know about that volume issue, Vicky. I've never had to
Oh,
deal with
well.
that before. So that's one thing I really learned from tonight.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I mean, wait a sec, I can't seem to get this last thing I've entered to go in now. Why not? Shoot. Oh, I don't want to direct message it. I want to put to everyone. There. Okay, there we go. It's actually not that clear, but whatever. It's something, eh?
Yeah, I see it to everyone. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much
Okay.
for doing that. And we can have that on the website as well. We should have a list of who people can contact
Yes, yes, we should. Yeah.
under an action. Do we have an action tab? I can't remember.
No, we don't, but we should develop something. I guess
Yes.
we better look at that. And while Chris is still helping us, she can, you know, we can ask her to do that. Sure.
Yes, because we want people to take action. I mean, it's, yes, we want to raise their awareness, but then we're hoping to impact their buying habits and their political activism.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Well, I think that's it for tonight, eh?
Okay, thanks so much, Vicky. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye for now.